Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer Podcast. I'm your co-host, Thomas Vick, joined by my co-host, Seth Wilson. Seth, how's it going today?
Thomas, I'm doing great. It is beautiful fall weather outside here in central Indiana, and you're starting to feel the temperature change a little bit and kind of got me thinking about, boy, fall break's coming up. We just came off of Labor Day weekend. I know I had a chance to get away a little bit over Labor Day weekend, and you were telling me you're going away for fall break. So we thought maybe that would be a good topic of conversation for today, especially as you're thinking about keeping the practice going while you're out of the office.
Yeah, the all-important question of how do I keep my practice going while I'm not in the office? I'm glad you're here today, Seth, so you can help me with that question.
Well, we learn together, right? And I think part of that whole discussion is understanding what that rhythm of refreshment needs to be for you. I know I'm not one that's good at taking time off and being away because I do feel that responsibility to my clients and to my team and making sure that we keep things moving forward. And so there's definitely a lot of pressure that can be associated with that. And what happens if I'm not here, right? And so answering that question, I think, is really kind of important as you're thinking about maybe building your own practice and what that would look like. So, in general, Thomas, I mean, you've been doing this several years now. How often do you take time off? What do you feel like is a good amount of time or has been helpful for you?
Yeah, so historically, my office has always closed down during the holidays. So, relatively between like Christmas Eve and New Year's Day, we closed down for about a week to 10 days, something like that, and just allow time for everybody in the office to enjoy the holidays, enjoy being with their family and friends. And I've always felt like that is important and is a morale boost and something that everybody in the law firm and our families really look forward to. And so I've always tried to keep that practice of taking time off during the holidays. I haven't taken off very much other than that, maybe a day or two here or there. The couple of mission trips that I've been on, I've taken a week off and I'm out of the country. So there really is no communication with my staff during those weeks. So my law practice has grown since then, I did a mission trip in 2023. And so the availability of resources that I have now to be able to kind of handle the workflow and continue to make progress on cases while I'm out of the office, I think we're still going to be able to accomplish that. So, while I'm unplugging, I'm not going to be unplugging entirely. We've talked on this podcast about my 4-day work week. Well, in preparation for this week and a half trip that I'm going to be on, I'm not going to be taking advantage of the 4-day work week. So I'll be coming in on some Fridays here leading up to our trip in October. And that probably is a principle here of making preparation for the trip. You're still going to have the same amount of work to do, over that amount of time that you're gone, at least hypothetically you are, and it still has to get done. So get ahead of it, work ahead, try to give yourself some margin to be able to get projects done. Typically, I'm out on Fridays, so on my Fridays coming up, I'm going to be working on things. They're really just going to be days where I'm focused on projects. I'm not really focused on client phone calls, client communications. I'm really just going to be focused on how do I get things done so that I'm in good shape come that Monday morning when I'm out of the office.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to keep in mind is you've got to plan ahead and you've got to know what your current workload looks like. You've got to know what your court related deadlines are, if any, both during the time that you're going to be out and when you get back. So you have enough of a margin built in to help catch up with all of the stuff that may have come in while you're out. And it's often harder, I think, to get away for 1 or 2 days than it is for a longer period of time. which leads me to some of the best advice I've ever received but never used. I don't know if you have any of those kind of things, especially when it comes to the law practice, is if you're going to take time off, always try to take 2 weeks of time because it's such an important thing, one, to get all of that organizationally set up, right? So you've pushed all the calendar events around and blocked off that time. But it also takes time as you're on vacation to actually unplug and decompress from everything that's going on. So that may take a week. And then the second week is when you actually are able to relax and be on vacation. And then, the last couple of days of that are probably going to be gearing up to what you're coming back to as a result. So, but I think that principle is really important of planning ahead and starting to say, okay, how am I going to get the things done that need to be done before I leave? And then have enough time to get the things in process and going again when I get back.
Yes, and reserving time on the calendar is the way that I do that. So, I'm going to be back in town on a Wednesday, but I'm really not going to be full throttle until the following Monday because I'm anticipating that Thursday and Friday that I'm back at the office for the first time in a couple weeks, I'm going to have some catching up to do. And so rather than trying to just hit the ground running with the client phone calls, client appointments, I really need to be catching up on what I've missed over the last week and a half. So I'll be available if there's some kind of emergency that comes up on those 2 days. Really, I'll be available to my staff if any emergency pops up. But, you just want to work into your calendar and, some time to be able to catch up on projects.
I think one thing that's helped me with that, Thomas, is getting my out of office email response put together and actually sort of starting that the first day that I'm going to be gone, or before the first day I'm going to be gone, excuse me, where I'm starting to communicate with people who are emailing me on my last day of the office that, hey, at some point today, I'm going to be out and not returning until a certain point in the future. Now, I'm going to try to take care of as many of those last minute details as I can that day, but I'm already trying to communicate with internal folks and external folks that I'm going to be unavailable for a little while and set that expectation and or identify, those last minute things that may really need to be done before I actually unplug. And I found that's really helpful to do on the front end and on the back end. So if I'm coming back on a Wednesday, I may keep the out of office all the way through Friday, just so I can block out those next 2 days from an expectation of a normal response. Again, just trying to set clear communication and expectations with folks who are communicating that I'm going to have a backlog of things most likely to get through before I can get to new stuff that may show up, even though I'm really back in the office. So I've kind of set that up and I make sure that I'm communicating clearly that I'm not saying I'm out of the office today when I'm actually in the office, because I don't feel like that's being truthful with everybody, but really just setting the expectation, and folks understand that you're on vacation and that happens. So I think helping communicate what it is and when they can expect a reply is really helpful.
Absolutely. Take advantage of the away message on your email signature line. That's really, really important. And that will set expectations for clients and how quickly you communicate with them. During the trip, I have in mind that there will be 2 or 3 days where we'll be kind of not doing a whole lot. And those days will offer an opportunity, perhaps, for me to sit down and actually catch up on email or catch up on communications with my team so that really I'm not totally out of pocket. And there may be some projects that I can kind of move along while I'm on the trip. We got 2 or 3 days where we're probably just going to be at the hotel most of the day. And, while the family is watching a movie or something like that, maybe you send an email or catch up on a message that one of your staff sent to you. And that probably won't impact anything with the trip. They may not even notice that you're sending an email or what have you, but it's, if that client that receives an email from you knows that you're on vacation and you're also sending an email to them, that's going to really make a good impression on that client. And so it's an opportunity to continue to serve while also kind of tampering down those client expectations for communication.
Yeah, and I think the important aspect of that is you're not taking away from the primary focus of why you're away. And I know folks will say, well, why are you checking email or why are you doing? And I say, well, because if I don't, my mind is going to be wondering what's going on at the office. And so if I can spend a half an hour going through and okay, nothing's going sideways and everything's okay. Now I can relax and focus on where I am and why I'm there and not worry so much about what's happening on the home front. But that's kind of that counterbalance that I found over time of I do need to sort of have that checkpoint, if you will, just to make sure that all the resources that need to be exchanged are being exchanged and questions are being answered that they can. And if there's times that, look, I'm with my family, you shut the phone off and you're there, right? And if there's early morning, because I'm up anyway, and just drinking coffee and kind of doing my normal routine so that my brain can disconnect, then I'm going to do that as well. And so that's the balance I think you got to figure out for yourself as a lawyer. What level of continued connection are you going to need to the office? And what are your boundaries going to be around that? So, do you take your email account and disconnect it from your phone, for example? Are you taking an iPad or a laptop with you on vacation just to check in? Or is that an excuse to get some extra work done? You need to know for yourself what that boundary looks like and also pay attention to what signals your family is telling you because they may be communicating to you that, hey, it doesn't look like you are actually here with us. You're still at the office. So, what's your priority? And so, clients are ultimately important, but I think family probably needs to show a little bit more importance in that sense. So, figuring out what works for you and your family and meeting their expectations because if they see you on your phone all the time while you're on vacation, even though you're trying to make sure they're taken care of, that can communicate things as well. So, good balance, something to be a little bit intentional about and reflective of as you're thinking through preparing for that vacation.
Yeah, and I don't really have um, any lofty goals of having a completely virtual office, anything like that. I hear attorneys on the internet talking about, oh, you can have a virtual office, you can practice from anywhere. Well, yeah, you can, but there's got to be boots on the ground somewhere in the state in which you're licensed to practice, at least in my opinion. And so I I guess I'm sort of testing that a little bit. You can kind of be on vacation, check a few things, get a little bit of work done, but not, you're not going to be working a full day while you're in Florida. So that's kind of how I'm approaching this trip is I'm just going to be making sure that things are moving along, but not working too much on these lighter days in our schedule.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to setting expectations. If your family's expectations are met and you've communicated what the anticipated time and check-in time with the office is going to look like and everybody's on the same page, then everybody can relax and enjoy the time and those memories will be made. And like you, I feel like the virtual office thing in an ideal world sounds great, but where do you get the client interaction? Where do you get the community connection? There are trade offs for that as well. And so, again, your personality as an attorney is going to drive a lot of that. And personally, I like that face to face contact that we have with clients and walking them through some of the challenges that they go through and being present with them makes a big difference. But you also need to be able to kind of get yourself refilled so you can help carry those burdens and shoulder the load while you're there. So, how do you balance those two? Make sure that you're being equipped and recharged and ready to come back and serve in an even more enhanced capacity.
Yeah, and maybe the larger point in all of this is you open up your practice because you want to practice in the certain areas that you want to practice in. For me, it's estate planning and elder law. You want to be able to be in charge of your own schedule. So, you know, plan trips like these, you're taking advantage of that kind of decision that you've made. But also, the counterpoint to that is all of the work still has to be done. All of the responsibility is still yours. You're not shirking it. And, that's the decision that people have to factor in is sure you want to own your own schedule and make your own, you know, control what areas that you practice in, but you've got to be committed to it. You can't be going on 2 week vacations every other month. That's just not a sustainable way of practicing law. You really need to be working every day in the office. I remember when I was first starting out, and I was taking on some public defender work. One of the judges that I practiced in front of, was kind of relating to me what, his experience was as a solo practitioner. And, he said, you really have to be in the office every single day. And that has meant a lot to me because what do they say about the law? Possession is 9/10 of the law. Just showing up is 9/10 of practicing. You just have to keep going and building that momentum in order to justify trips, out of the office and vacations and things like that.
Yeah, and there's a common kind of refrain, if you will, in business leadership and organizational leadership that if you leave and everything falls apart, did you really set everything up to keep going? And I don't know that it always applies in the legal context or the law firm context because folks hire lawyers that they have a relationship with. And there's some things that you can connect them with a teammate and or colleague and those kind of things. But if they don't feel like you're carrying out their best interests, you're not going to be able to continue representing them. They'll find somebody that is answering their calls, that responds to their emails, that carries the load with them. And so that's a big important part of building that practice is that consistency, being responsive and being available and all of those things. I had a comment from a client recently who said, "Boy, I tried to get on your calendar and I was very full." And I said, "That's a good thing for a lawyer. We want that to happen, but also, boy, you got to pay attention to that because if your calendar is so full that you're not able to serve clients kind of as they come in, or you don't have time to have that conversation when you bump into them, on the corner as you're walking through town, that sends a message as well." And so it's never going to find, I think, a balance there. It's more of a tension to manage than a balance to achieve, but you're always kind of working on that and integrating then the vacation time is part of that analysis. And again, like you mentioned earlier, sometimes it means a lot to that client that you took time out while you were out of the office because they had a pressing concern. And they'll remember that and they'll tell their friends that, look, when I really needed it, they got back to me.
Yeah. And another thing that I just thought of that I do whenever I'm going to be out of the office is I'll kind of sneakily schedule, you know, signing appointments for estate plans right before my trip, so that those are finished. So there are very few outstanding matters that need my review while I'm out. So I try to get estate plans finished before I leave. And then the week that I'm back and taking appointments, I try to fill those things up, fill up those slots with as many initial consultations as I can get, because there probably will be a lag in new client retention. If you know, of course, if you're the only attorney in the office, of course, there's going to be a lag. I've got an associate attorney, so there may not be as much of a lag, but you want to set yourself up so that that following week you're able to retain new clients and maybe make up for that cash flow that you missed in the week or two that you were gone previously.
Yeah, that's a great point in terms of thinking about and planning for the cash flow as well, right? So that's a different analysis depending on where you are in your practice. If you're building a practice and cash flow is slow, taking a vacation is only going to make that cash flow slower. And so you have to, the give and take or the balance to achieve there is how do you plan ahead so that not only personally are you able to cover the costs of the vacation from your personal finances, but the business finances, because when you come back, that's going to create a little bit of a delay and a gap, if you will, to fill back in. And so sometimes that can be just fine, and you've got something that came in or you finished a bigger project, and that's going to sustain you through that time. But you can't take all the money out of the office and then have those expenses come up. So it's kind of a dual analysis of the personal impact of the expense and the business impact of both the expense and the lost revenue during that time and the delay in new revenue coming in.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. With estate planning clients, I haven't always felt like it has been a loss of revenue. It's just maybe a delay in revenue. So, client calls the week before I'm going to leave. They want to schedule next week. I'm not going to be there. But we're just going to push that appointment to, the week that I'm here. I'm probably not going to lose that appointment because of the delay. Most clients are reasonable and they understand, okay, you're going to go on vacation. That's great. We'll catch up with you whenever you get back in town. And so I think, yeah, you can kind of subtly maneuver around it and it doesn't really upset the client expectation.
Yeah. Again, I think it's very important to build these times in as you're thinking about your annual plan of, okay, this is what we want to do. This is where we want to take the kids. This is the time we want to get away for an anniversary trip or something like that. And make sure that those are built in and factored into your year as best you can, because then you can build expectations around that from a client standpoint. We all know that the emergency case may come in, or the last minute case of you get contacted and statute of limitations runs the next day. That's a big deal. Either you can't take that case or you're going to change what you're doing so you can and meet the obligations that are associated with it. And so having that bigger plan built in for the year can really help you adjust if, as you get closer to that time, something else shows up that you need to factor in or adjust for.
Yeah. Well, thank you for helping me understand how I need to approach the next few weeks in preparation for my vacation. We're looking forward to it. We're gonna take a few days and go see Mickey Mouse down at Disney World. So we're looking forward to it.
That's awesome. Well, I hope you have a great time. I really think that's a great thing to do. And, I'm sure we will miss recording while you're there unless you want to, record from Space Mountain or something while you're going through.
I do, actually. Yes.
That'd be awesome. Well, Thomas, tell folks where they can find us on the interwebs and how to connect with Lifetime Legacy Lawyers.
Yeah, just go to youtube.com, search for Lifetime Legacy Lawyer Podcast. And also you can find the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. Look out for that. And like us, subscribe us, share the material so that other like-minded attorneys who are solo and small firm attorneys can be edified by the content that we put out.
Well, we are the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer Podcast, where we are helping lawyers launch. Thomas, we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Seth.